Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about using one of the Arduino shields right on your Raspberry Pi. As you might know, Arduino has been around for a longer time than the Raspberry Pi, and there are several shields already available for it. For example, I have several shields right here. The red ones you see are from SparkFun Electronics. I have this white shield from Link Sprite. If you go on eBay, there you would find probably hundreds of shields covering everything you can think of. It would be great if I can take these shields and plug them on top of a Raspberry Pi. Why Raspberry Pi? Well, Raspberry Pi is running Linux and Windows 10. If I'm running a Raspberry Pi 2 or 3, and if I'm using the Raspberry Pi Zero, it's only $5. So it's really easy for me to grab one of these that have full operating system and a lot of horsepower and use one of these shields. Unfortunately, it's not really straightforward. The processor used on the Raspberry Pi, it's made to handle an operating system. It's not really made for embedded devices. It doesn't have PWM. I think there's one maybe, but it doesn't have PWMs. It doesn't have analog inputs, CAN bus, for example. But those are needed on most of the shields. So to use the Raspberry Pi, you would have to add something to handle PWM, something to handle analog inputs. Also, the Raspberry Pi is 3.3 volts, and it's not 5-volt tolerant. Most of the shields are 5 volts. For example, a shield has a button. When a button is pressed, a pin is set high to 5 volts. And this will damage your Raspberry Pi. So that is also another concern. Now, figuring out the pinout, that's also another challenge. So as an experiment, we spent some time, and we have designed something that we call the Duino Pi for Arduino, and obviously Pi for the Raspberry Pi. So Duino Pi right here plugs on top of the Raspberry Pi with this connector here on the bottom, plugs right on the Raspberry Pi, and then on the top you have the Arduino pinout, Arduino compatible pinout. These two chips on this hat, one is PWM and one is analog. So the analog chip is connected to those pins that are analog on the Arduino pinout. And those will be upright right here. And then there are a few PWM capable pins, and then this PWM pin goes to these pins. And now, working on the design, we realized, well, wait, there's now another challenge, because the PWM pins need to be inputs or outputs. Again, if we're making this for one specific shield, then that would be a piece of cake. But then we want this to be generic, to cover every shield. And meaning, when you say every shield, some may use any of the pins as input, as output, as PWM if that's an option, or SPI if that's an option. So, or the other like I2C and SPI. And so to be 100% compatible, we see these chips down here. We had to add some multiplexers, and those to switch between the functionality. So if you need PWM, it's switched to PWM. If you need input or output, we switch to GPIO, general purpose input output. And all this is handled through software, so you don't really have to worry about it. You pick a pin and you say you want to use it. The driver automatically knows you need PWM and switch it to PWM. Now, to handle the 5-volt problem, we have added Zener protection and resistors on every single pin. There's a resistor that's a current limiting kind of resistor to drop the load on the Zener diode and the other side of the circuitry. And then the Zener is they think it's like 3.1 volts or 3.6 volts, something around 3.3 volts. So it clamps the voltage at that level. So it will never go beyond what the Raspberry Pi can handle. Now, this is complete, it's beautiful, everything works nice about it, but then we start hitting other challenges as well, like analog. Analog over here, we decided to set it to 0 to 5 volts, so that's the range. That's nice, but then if that's the range, we cannot add Zeners on the analog inputs. If we add analog the Zeners, meaning if the voltage goes over 3.3, it gets cut right there. And then you cannot measure up to 5 volts. Then we decided to not add Zeners on there. But then if you use a shield that uses those pins, that could damage your Raspberry Pi. So on with the final design on the analog circuits, this is not showing here. I don't believe this is the final design. On the last design, we added several resistors that do not populate. We don't place them on the board. And those to add the GPIO functionality to the analog input. So if you need them as analog, they are 0 to 5 volts. You don't have to worry about levels or concerns. But if you needed them as GPIO on some rare shield that uses these pins, like out of all these shields, I think only one of them that would use, I think it's the motor controller. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was this one or this one. One of the motor controllers use these pins. I could be wrong, but one of these shields used them. But that's enough to stop us from saying every single shield work on your Raspberry Pi. Anyway, we've gotten to a point where we've decided that we just want to release this publicly and give you guys the design files. And if you guys want to make it as is, or if you want to make changes and make it your own, you're more than welcome to do whatever you like with the designs for the Duino Pi. And if you have it on there, let's give you some examples of what you can do with the Raspberry Pi. Here is a SparkFun MIDI shield, so now you can plug in a MIDI and generate sounds. This over here is the EL shield, those strips that light up, or some of them are squares, the pads that light up. They're really nice if you're building a custom or making some really cool effect. This is XB. There's all kind of wireless sensors, wireless modules that you can plug over here. So your Raspberry Pi can connect over XP. Even if you have Raspberry Pi 3 with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, you can add XP in for maybe local sensors. CAN bus. This is very popular. We have had several customers talk to us about having CAN on Raspberry Pi. You can have the touch shield. All these are made by SparkFun, all the red shields, by the way. This is really nice. This would be a really cool demo. This takes the analog inputs. It's called a Spectrum shield. So this takes, if I understand this correctly, I haven't tried it yet, but this takes the analog input, that's the audio input, and then it gives you different levels on different frequencies. So you can have some really cool effect going on your monitor while the music is playing. This over here is a mobile cell phone cell modem shield, so you can connect to the internet anywhere you are. GPS, that's also another option. All these would work on your Raspberry Pi through Duino Pi, by the way. This is the weather shield if you want to check humidity, temperature, for example. And then we have these two motor shields. I think this can handle a lot more amperage. It has bigger chips, but both of them are used to control motors. And even again, if you go and grab a shield that is not from SparkFun, from eBay, from China, this is from LinkSprite, these will also most likely will just work for you as well. This is a nice display with buttons that you can also use with your Raspberry Pi. I hope you find this useful and you're excited about grabbing the design files, the Eagle design files for the Duino Pi. And if you make it and use it, show us what you've done. We would love to share your outcome from using the Duino Pi. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.